Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Move Forward Anyway podcast, featuring dream accelerating inspiration. I'm Jeff Meyer, your host, author, entrepreneur, and coach. My goal with this podcast is to help you identify and clarify your own dream by taking wisdom from others' successes and challenges. If you're looking to take action on your dream, to make a difference doing something you love, but your fears are holding you back, then this podcast is for you. If you're interested in finding additional support, you can also check out my Dream Accelerator coaching program designed to help realize your full potential and reshape your future. As always, you can learn more about my Dream Accelerator program at jeffmeyer.org. Using my Dream Accelerating formula, heart-centered entrepreneurs can focus on their dream, name their fears, change their mindset, define their next, and move forward anyway. Welcome back, successful dreamers, to another episode of the Move Forward Anyway podcast. I'm Jeff Meyer, and here again with Hallie, second time, one of the few podcast guests I've had that I've invited back. That doesn't mean I won't invite others back. It just means we're in that mode now, and 40 of these podcasts that I'm very interested in hearing what has been happening in the lives of the people I talk to. I think it's been a year ago. So, Hallie, thank you so much for being with me again. Thank you for the work you do to help people understand their own personality and how that plays in particular in entrepreneurship and building a business. And we're going to talk more about that today. So if you want to reintroduce yourself quickly this afternoon, I'd appreciate that. It's so good to see you and so good to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me back. I got the email. I think it was from Katie, your assistant. And I'm like, I literally I was just on LinkedIn and I was looking at your stuff and I got her email. I'm like, okay, well, it's meant to be. So thank you for having me back. I'm really excited to be here. I had so much fun on the other podcast. Last time we did the podcast, we were in the midst of all at home. I don't know if we were locked down or not, but
yeah. The midst of the pandemic, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm really glad
and
not to be there anymore.
Yeah, I am too. Hopefully, we'll stay open.
All right.
So you're a coach, and you help leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners like me understand how to move forward anyway. Recognizing a deeper sense of self, and you're an expert in the Enneagram, and man, I'd like to talk more about that today and kind of tease out how you would have a conversation with someone that is building a business. And so here I am, I'm willing, guinea pig, to have you talk to me about
That's
this
awesome.
and maybe help someone else that maybe has some understanding of the Enneagram go deeper, or someone that's never heard of it, although I find that difficult to believe these days, want to go and understand themselves a little bit better.
Yeah. So let me just give a really short, high-level synopsis of what the Enneagram is. And that sounds like a wonderful plan. So the Enneagram is a personality typing system, and it's a system that has roots back thousands of years. And whenever I say that, sometimes people look at me with one eyebrow up, like, what are you talking about? But it's, you can find elements of the system, the circle, the hexagon, the triangle itself, and what all of those have different meanings. And also in regards to where it's written in the literature, there have been lots of interpretations of the Enneagram over the years. To put it together in the form that it is now is actually fairly recent and has happened in written form from like the 1970s on. But no one really, it was just one of those things that if you were in psychology, you might have learned about it, in school. But in the last few years, I don't know why, but it has really caught on.
Yeah.
And, I found it at a life group through church that someone had started talking about it a few years ago. And it was one of those things that in those moments in your life where God whispers, listen, or he just like, there's this presence that you feel like, okay, I need to really pay attention here. And so I started learning about the Enneagram. I actually was introduced to it in my master's program back in the 90s, but it was just a tool. I didn't look twice at it. I think you have to be ready for a tool like the Enneagram, because the Enneagram is a tool that helps you see yourself for who you really are outside of your personality. So it's so easy to be like, well, I'm an Enneagram 2 or I'm an Enneagram 4, and then start to associate with those characteristics that you do see in yourself, and to get actually caught up in using that as an excuse. Well, I'm like that because I'm a 2. That's just one way that I know I've used it. And I think everybody who's ever, really gotten into the Enneagram has probably done in some way, shape, or form. But I like to educate people in terms of, now that you know what your personality entails, I want to help you get out of the box that you put yourself in.
Huge. And we tend to do that, and we're told not to do that with the Enneagram. Don't ever type someone else, but we do that. Oh, they're a 5. So, that makes sense. And so then we tend to put other people in a box as well.
All the time. Yeah.
And as a business owner and an entrepreneur, oh my gosh, we can explore this more deeply. I think about the limitations I place on myself because I am a 4. I am an Enneagram 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's, and then I give myself a pass instead of leaning into the place I'm supposed to go in a healthy position, which I think is a 1 for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is to be more disciplined and to be more thoughtful about my planning, and more articulate in planning, instead of just kind of letting things happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does your putting yourself in a box hinder your capacity as a business owner or entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of like anything, if we overly identify with a role, like if you over-identify as a dad or as a mom or as a business owner, or you make that thing almost godly, right? Like we all do that with certain things in our life. You get into trouble, right? Because God will say, you think so, huh? Take it away. And it almost makes me tear up, because and it's not like we have a mean, angry God, but he wants us to realize that we are so much more than those roles that we have in our lives. And I think the same applies when it comes to personality. Our personality serves a huge purpose and allows us to stay safe, allows us to understand ourselves and our world, allows us to succeed. But beyond the personality, the person that we're born as an infant, as a child, the inner child, the highest self, however you want to say it, hopefully the person we get back to as we move closer to the end of life as well, is really, in my opinion, what God wants us to truly discover, without all the masks, without all the doing, without all the fixing. And that's hard to understand and explain.
So I'm a 4. And you just said something that really kind of triggered, not in a bad way, but triggered something for me, is like, I'm always trying to fix me. That's, as I understand a 4, that's kind of, there's always something missing. There's something more that I'm pursuing. And that gets exhausting. So what would you say to me as a business owner, entrepreneur, that happens to be a 4 on the Enneagram? How am I limiting myself with that kind of viewpoint?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I do to get to a deeper level of awareness for myself so that I can be healthy and move forward anyway with an appreciation of who I am more deeply than just being a 4? Man, that was I don't know if I could write out that question. It would be so confusing. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there that that you can follow up on.
There's a few elements that come to mind for me when you say that. 4s, first of all, for people out there who don't know, the Enneagram is made up of 9 personality types, and 9 is significant in a number of ways. I won't go into the whole spiel on that, but if you parcel out the Enneagram, you've got the body center, which is types 8, 9, and 1. You've got the heart center, which is types 2, 3, and 4. And then you've got the head center, which is types 5, 6, and 7. And just because you find your number as a 4 or as a 9 or whatever, it doesn't mean that you only resonate from that center. But what it does mean is that you tend to approach life first from that center. So as a heart type, as a type 4, you're going to feel things. And 4s are known for feeling things at an intensity that no one else feels things. And so it's really hard for a 4 to describe to other people, because in my opinion, one of the beauties of being a 4 is you really understand joy and you really understand sadness at a depth that a lot of other people can only wish to understand that. But it also can get in your way because those emotions can deplete that energy and make it hard to move forward. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And so then you think, oh my gosh, he's got a Move Forward Anyway podcast. Where did that come? Well, it comes from my own journey. It comes from my own struggle, right? So that's why I can help others in their struggle, because I've been there and understand it. But I can also get stuck in it. I can get stuck in the emotion. And that's why, so a heart-centered first approach, in order to be healthy, moves to a, what's 8, 9, and 1?
8, 9, and 1 is a body center. It's more of a gut center.
Okay, so say more. So I've been told in the past that the place I need to go to when I'm unhealthy or stuck is to a 1. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So there definitely that part of that is accurate. So there are arrows on the Enneagram. So if someone's out there right now looking at the tool, you'll see these arrows if you look it up. And basically, if you know your type, you'll have an arrow that's going away from your number and an arrow that's coming towards your number. The arrow that's going away from your number usually indicates that if you're unaware of like your personality, you usually go to that arrow in times of stress. So for a 4, that for you, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4, that would actually be 1.
So right? When I'm unhealthy, unaware, I go to a 1 and I get how would you describe? I get more controlling.
Hang on a second. I want to make sure they're at 1, 7, 5, 8, 2. I'm sorry. No, you were right. You were right. No, when you are feeling stressed, you end up going to your 2.
2.
Yeah, which is the helper, which is also in the heart triad.
And how does that show up under stress for me?
So for a 4, under stress, oftentimes what you'll see is some of the unhealthy qualities of 2. So it might be things like giving to get without really, not consciously. This is like a subconscious thing. Wondering about why you're, not getting maybe a thank you or a follow-up from someone. Abandonment. Feeling vulnerable and that you might get left. The thing about 2 is 2s are also pretty emotional. So that's why it's really hard for a 4, because when you're in a bad spot and you're going to stress, you pick up on some of the things of 2, which is also more emotion. more in its feeling. Sometimes helping in a way that depletes you even more.
Yeah. So the healthy move then is to the 1. And
Yep.
how do I show up when I'm healthy then?
So in terms of that arrow, as you go to 1, so 1 is in the gut or the body triad is what we call it. And so the way that you show up when you move to 1 is you move to the higher side of 1. So the 1 is called the reformer, and they are people that integrity is the most important thing. Structure is really important, and doing is very important. So being able to, especially for a 4, especially if you're having a lot of feeling and you're feeling stuck, being able to move into action.
Action. Man, does this describe me or what? So how would you help someone like me who's in an unhealthy spot, unawares, stressed? All those things you said are true. Everything you said about the downside or the dark side of a 2 is how I show up when I'm stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And it just adds to the emotion and to the depth of discouragement, right? So, and on the other side, when I'm healthy, all those things are true. I'm acting, I'm not doubting, I'm not second guessing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I make decisions easier.
Mm-hmm.
My team will say, "Oh my gosh, that's you just made a decision. That's great." Because but the prior month they see me waffle on decisions or want to get more and more input instead of just making a decision. So they recognize that healthiness. What would you say to me in a place of unhealth to help me become more aware? How would you coach me out of that?
Yeah. So
through that.
Yeah, through that. One of the basic templates that I use is something I'm just started using. Don't have it in print yet, but it's basically 2 big circles. And one is a circle of inner resources, and the other circle is external resources. And that inner, what I do is I help you gauge how full those circles are. So, for example, from an inner resource perspective, what are your beliefs? Like spiritually, what are your beliefs about yourself? How do you talk to yourself? In addition to beliefs, we look at things like, how are you restoring? How much water are you drinking? How much sleep are you getting? How much rest outside of sleep are you getting? Mm-hmm. All of those things that really come from within. You would even say some are yin-like. How are you breathing? Then you look at your external resources. So are you reaching out for help? And not just help in the, like the usual kind, like through your spouse or through a friend but help in terms of, do you have a good doctor? Do you have a therapist? Do you have a coach? Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe instead you enjoy spending time by the water by yourself on a Sunday afternoon and journaling, but being able to identify those external resources. First of all, how many do you have and are you using them? And what I find is for people who are really depleted from an inner resource perspective, they need way more of the external.
So you can draw on the external to actually help restore the internal.
Yeah. Yeah. Or vice versa. So if you're really strong in the internal, then maybe you don't need as much help. Maybe that's where your cup is so full that you're like, I'm actually in a giving place and I'm able to give. But it's very individual and it's very environmental. The last couple of years, I would say most of us have been lacking on the internal resources. I would say a lot of us were not really taking care of ourselves in that realm. And then we weren't even going to external resources, for a variety of reasons, fear being one of them.
Is that why we were so depleted in the internal? Is because the external was kind of taken away?
I think so. I really do. And there wasn't a dotted line. Like, people didn't know what to do. And then they're like, well, I can't see a therapist because they're booked for 6 months, or I can't, or people were like, I know, like, people in my family are like, I don't want to go out and risk getting COVID. Mm-hmm. So it was a tough time.
Yeah. And we're seeing the results of that.
Mm-hmm.
As people are discovering that.
Yeah.
Wow.
100%.
So if I'm your client and I've reached out to you to help me as an entrepreneur and business owner get unstuck, what kind of questions would you ask me? What would you want to know about what I'm going through or where I'm at to help unlock a healthy response, an aware response to my situation?
I would actually start with asking you, giving me a typical day and getting into some detail with it. So, do you have understanding your natural rhythms? Do you have a natural time you get up? Do you have a regular time you act? And it's not, and some people don't, have rhythms that are a little chaotic and it works for them, but just understanding what those rhythms are about is really key. And then being able to dive into, like, what kind of, and this is a harder one, but what kind of energy you feel like you have. There's a lot of people out there that call it vibrating higher, vibrating lower, and I think it's hard to tangibly understand, but so I try to give people a spectrum of 1 to 10 in terms of when they wake up and then when they go to bed, where their energy is at, and then where their output is on that same spectrum. And if what is it realistic? And a lot of times people see, my energy at noon is at a 2 and I've got 6 clients after that. Like, how am I going to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Working at the time when your energy is the highest, doing your most productive work, scheduling the biggest things that need to be done, the times when you're the most alert.
Yes.
Is that related to personality type, Enneagram too? Do you find that 4s are more engaged later in the day and 7s aren't, is that not connected to the personality?
In terms of time of day, I don't know so much about that, but what I do know, and this is really important, sometimes people, you Google a type 4 and it doesn't necessarily, it says artist or creative, or, that they are deep thinkers, deep feelers, that kind of a thing. But some of the things that they miss when you just do a regular Google search is 4s tend to overwork. And a lot of times people don't think that about 4s. They're like, that I've never seen that before. When I work with a 4, it depends on the subtype. So subtype is kind of another category of the Enneagram, whether or not you're a self-preservation 4, a social 4, or a sexual 4 as a dominant subtype. And that's part of the things that we do when you work with me, is we figure that out, because that really makes a difference. So if I'm working with a 4 and I find out that 4, for example, is a self-preservation 4, I know that, first of all, they probably had a hard time typing themselves. And second of all, they're probably overdoing it. So there definitely are some patterns.
And it's not always overdoing it in terms of visible work, but overdoing it in the mental, never turning off the brain work.
Yep, for sure.
Because I'm also a pastor besides being a business leader and entrepreneur. And I hear this all the time. Well, you only work 1 day a week.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but
I know, because that's what people see.
I know.
It's just a repetitive theme. That's all they see. But they don't realize what happens in here all the time.
Right.
That affects internal resources, sleep, rest. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
The other thing,
go ahead.
The other thing I would
Please.
say that's really helpful for people to understand when it comes to the Enneagram and how it plays out for them in terms of being their profession or being a business owner is to understand the passion of their type.
Okay.
And so,
say more of that.
So the passion, there's obviously one passion for each type. And I'm just going to say this right now, they're not pretty. They're also called the sin of the type. So
so it's not good passion. It's
it's the ugly side of what happens to the personality. And oftentimes the passion is something that we don't even realize is there until we really start to do some work on how we feel about life and others, and maybe working with a coach or a therapist or whatever it may be. And so the passion of Enneagram type 4 is envy. And when I say that word, I know sometimes that's where I can get people who kind of back up. They're like, really? But what does that mean, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean like you're envying someone for something they have. It could be envying your life 5 years ago. It could be having, envy exists in all kinds of ways, but the passion is the hardest thing to work on. So when I work with someone, we understand it, but I help them with arrows and subtype and a whole bunch of other things before we work on passion.
Wow. So if I were to become your client, how long would you have to work on me before I'm fixed?
Oh, that's funny.
Even the way I asked the question, right?
But you know what? It's funny because I've had the same thing run through my mind. Like, I think we all have that feeling like, okay, I'm going to go to therapy or I'm going to go to coach, but how many sessions do I really need until I'm good? I always start people with 8 sessions, at least with the Enneagram, because there's arrows and there's so many elements to it. And there's so many activities based on the person and what they want to achieve. But I would say after 8 sessions that people have a really good understanding and they have lots of areas of homework that they are working on that has made a difference. But most people do another 8. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in 16 weeks you're good.
I realized the way I asked that was trying to be a little bit humorous, because I've had the same people say that to me, like, oh, we've had 2 marriage sessions with you. Shouldn't our marriage be fixed? And no, it takes, there's habits and there's things that need to be overcome that take a lot longer than a couple sessions. So I realize that. What else would you like to say to the audience today? Celebrating maybe progress that's been made with clients, or recent story that highlights what you do and highlights why you're so passionate about it. Why do you care so much about this?
Yeah.
What would you like to share?
Couple things. Personal story first, and then I want to say something professionally. So when I first started with the Enneagram, I did what a lot of people do. I typed myself incorrectly. I typed myself as an Enneagram 8, and I'm a 2 to my core. And I think oftentimes when you start to look at it, you look at it through rose-colored glasses, because it's hard to really see yourself for who you are unless you're willing to get some external support. You always need a third party to do any growth work, in my opinion. And so personally, I did it wrong. I, mistyped myself, and then I started typing everybody else, and I was annoying all my family and my friends. And I was not being a good person. I really wasn't. And so knowing that, I started to really look for more education I could do on my own in terms of reading. And then I became certified through the Inner Life Skills Training, which was an okay certification. But then I found the CP Enneagram Academy, whole nother level. Hands down, the best information and education out there. And it's almost like a degree. So I am just starting the academy now. I have 1 out of 4 certifications complete. Beatrice Chestnut and Uranio Pius are incredible people. And the one thing I really like about this is that they are constantly doing their own work. And they will tell you, you're always going to be learning. You always are working on yourself. There isn't really an end, which I really like.
Right. You're never going to be fixed. And the good news for us, those of us who follow Jesus, is we're complete in him, and he's already provided everything we need to be fixed. So we get to do this from love, not for love, from rest, not for rest, all those things. So yeah, that's great. So keep going. CP Enneagram Academy.
Yeah.
So what's the personal story of that? What has changed for you?
Yeah. So similar to what you and I were talking right before the podcast. So I've been, over the last couple of years in particular, I've been praying a lot, but praying kind of like, genie in the bottle. You know what I mean? Like, God, this is what I would really like. Just, would try to pray the right way. And then, so anyways, I had a health issue in the last couple of months that was completely out of left field physically. And it threw me. Like it was really scary health issue for me. And basically what it did is it led me to God. It led me to prayer. It led me to meditation. It led me to journaling, which your wife definitely planted a seed in me on. And it opened, like God was saying, you keep asking for these things, but are you really ready? And you need to, like, I was going, I wasn't pausing. I wasn't breathing, I wasn't journaling. I wasn't doing all the things I tell my clients to do. And he said, you're going to physically suffer because I'm going to make you slow down. At least that's how I interpreted it. And it has been life-changing. Like emotionally, it's been life-changing. My business has slowed down significantly. It's another thing that's happened, which I don't like. But it's given me time to heal, and it's given me time to really see what God's been trying to tell me. And I feel like I'm only this far. I feel like I have so much further to go.
And the professional story you want to share?
So the professional story was really cool. And I don't know if this happens to you, Jeff, but a woman reached out to me. She's a lovely, lovely human being. She found me on LinkedIn, which I rarely get that. Most people are like, someone told me about you. You worked with so-and-so. So it was a complete random cold call. She owns a medical spa in McFarland, a new med spa. And she said, I really want to hire you to come in and do some Enneagram stuff with our staff. Would you be interested? I'm like, of course, 100%. So I did an 1.5 hour long session. It's really tough to do a lot in an 1.5 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
It was
exactly
real high level, but really, really fun. And everybody there was very interested in learning more. And it was such a pleasure to work with her and her staff. And I've been working with a little bit of her staff, individually, one-on-one. And one person in particular that I've been working with, she similar to me, she mistyped herself. She's like, I really think I'm this. And in my heart, I knew she wasn't. I just, but I took her through the process, and then I kept asking the questions, and then I'd email her how she responded to me so that she could see what her language was. And then she's like, oh, I am an Enneagram, this in. So once that process is so powerful, because then you're the one who makes the decision. It's not somebody else slapping a label on you or diagnosis on you.
Yeah. So
Um,
one of the things I really appreciate about this conversation with you is what you said at the very beginning. And that is the purpose of the Enneagram isn't to label us and keep us in a box. It's just the opposite. It's to help us understand how we naturally show up in the world as a first blush reaction, to be aware of that and to grow beyond that.
Yep.
That's being true to ourselves. It's not just saying, oh, I'm a 4, so it's okay to be feeling envious or emotional that I might be abandoned. That's not the way that we are designed to live. Being aware of that can help me grow beyond that.
Yeah. And so when you think of that, Jeff, what does that mean for you? Like, do you think back of when you were a young boy, or did something resonate for you where you're like, oh yeah, like, or maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's not necessarily even, a time in your life.
Well, it's very subtle. My answer, it's not a childhood thing as much as it is a now thing. Like I wonder how much of the struggle in my entrepreneurial story and in my leadership story is a result of my own lack of awareness and inability to grow beyond where I am. So specifically, I tend to wallow in my stuckness sometimes. And just, well, that's just the way it was destined to be. It's just going to be a struggle. And I hear people talk, and there's a lot of lies about this. We talked about this before the podcast too. A lot of lies about the entrepreneurial story. Like, you're going to get to 6 figures in 6 months, and you're going to have all these clients rolling in from all of the things that you're doing. And they're just going to resonate with, if you just articulate yourself more clearly, then everybody will just come running to you. And they're just all lies. And so then I hear that, and then I work at it, and I work at it really hard, and I work at it consistently, and I don't give up, and I'm like a bulldog. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep moving forward anyway. And the results just don't happen the way I want them to. And so then I just have a negative mindset about that. Like, well, that's just the way it's going to be for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And I can't seem to find the help to get me out of that, other than I'm just going to keep trying. I'm going to keep working at it, and maybe it'll happen. And it's not just business, it's also ministry. I just do this and I just do this, then more people want to know about Jesus. More people want to know about what it means to live a life abundantly in him. And there seems to be a lot of apathy in the world towards that life right now. And like I've given myself over to this life, and where are the results? Where are the people? Right. And so I wonder how much of that's just me being stuck in my envy. So you said another thing you said was interesting, is not just being envious of others. It can also be envious of an ideal.
100%.
Right? Like, I have this ideal of what it should be, or how it's supposed to turn out, what the results are supposed to look like. And then when they don't, that's the ugly side. That's the dark side of being a 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
And so the healthy side is quit wallowing and take action, right? Just do something. But when you're in that wallowing space, the pull to stay in inertia, right? The the pull to just stay put and wallow in it is so strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Especially for a 4.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so the doing something, I would say, is definitely, moving into that, using that one arrow is helpful, really helpful for a 4. But what I also think is really helpful is to remember that your personality resonates from a 4. So you have access to the high and the low side of 4. That's usually where you come from. And so the high side of 4 is all about being. It's all about hanging out and feeling.
And that's when I feel my best. Like when I'm in a podcast like this, where I didn't prepare, didn't have to labor over it, just show up and have a conversation, hang out with someone that stretches me and I'm engaged with. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And tapping into that is really important too.
Mm-hmm.
Hallie, I'm so grateful for you taking another go around the sun on this podcast. I'd love to have you on again. We should just keep scheduling these every so often. You've brought so much light to me today and awareness. I thank you for that. How can people get a hold of you to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, people can go to my website, which is the newutoday.com. It's NEW, the letter U, today.com. They can find me there, and they can also find me on Facebook, which is New You Today, Instagram. They can email me if anyone's out there and they're like, hey, I just want more information, which is my name, Hallie, HALLIE, at newutoday.com.
Awesome. Rich blessings to you and to your family, to your well-being and your health, so that you can help more and more people be aware and be their best selves. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Jeff. It was such a pleasure being on your podcast today.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay.
Hey, fellow dreamer. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Head over to my website, jeffmeyer.org, for all of the show notes and links. And when you're ready to move from overthinking about your dream to actually taking action on it, consider joining the Dream Accelerator community. Our clients are getting crystal clear on their dream with our Dream Generator Vivid Description 5-step process. They're discovering the truth about fear and how to use it as fuel to take courageous steps in the right direction. And most importantly, they are walking a clear path forward because they have made an investment in themselves to confidently realize their dreams. The results are so inspiring. Having coaching and companions on the dream journey is crucial. Remember, fear will come, fear will stay. Move forward anyway.